Today I will be telling you one of the earliest variants of Cinderella, a tale from China called Ye Xian. Come join me. Hi everyone, my name is Heidi. I'm a Malaysian author and welcome back. Last week we delved into the deep and unsettling world of Bawang Putih, Bawang Merah. And this week, as promised, I want to tell you the tale which probably or possibly inspired this tale of Bawang Putih, Bawang Merah. And it's a tale from China called The Tale of Ye Xian. So sit back, relax and chill while I tell you this tale. Once there was a powerful cave chief who lived in China. He had a beautiful daughter called Ye Xian who was good with pottery and poetry. Unfortunately, Ye Xian's mother died, and after a short while, her father decided to marry another woman who had a daughter of her own. Sadly, shortly after that, her father died, so Ye Xian came under the care of her stepmother. And of course, this is how all the trouble began. This stepmother wasn't a very nice stepmother. She was the typical fairy tale cruel stepmother, and she decided that she didn't like Ye Xian because Ye Xian was so beautiful, she was so kind and gentle and hardworking, unlike her own daughter, and she was very jealous of Ye Xian. She was worried that Ye Xian would be married off first because she was so beautiful and capable compared to her daughter. And this was a problem to her because if Ye Xian were to be married first, there was a question of dowry. There won't be enough dowry for her own biological daughter. So to stop this from happening, the stepmother turned Ye Xian into their servant. She gave her rags to dress. She gave her chores to do from morning till night. She hoped that all the hard work that Ye Xian did would make her ugly, but it didn't. She was still beautiful and she was patient and kind, and she did as she was told. Now, Ye Xian was always going to the pond to fetch water, and one day she came across a beautiful fish. She was surprised because this fish suddenly spoke to her. This fish was actually the spirit of her dead mother. And Ye Xian was very happy because this fish was a source of comfort to her. It was her friend, her mentor. The fish helped her out with her chores, and the fish was there to always listen to Ye Xian. So Ye Xian became a bit chirpier after that. She walked with a little spring in her step. She had color back in her cheeks, and her stepmother didn't like that because she wanted Ye Xian to be miserable. She wanted Ye Xian to look ugly. So one day the stepmother sneakily followed Ye Xian, and she saw that Ye Xian was talking to this fish, that this fish was making Ye Xian happy, that it was a source of comfort. So the stepmother decided that she would kill this fish. When Ye Xian left the pond, the stepmother caught the fish, killed it, fried it up, and served it to Ye Xian. Of course, Ye Xian didn't know that this fish was her friend, and she ate the fish. But later on, when she found out, she was distraught. She ran to the pond and cried her eyes out. And at this moment, something miraculous happened. Her spirit ancestor came down from the sky. Her spirit ancestor told her not to worry. He said to her, I know where the fish bones are. You must find the fish bones and bury them in 4 pots. And then you must hide each pot at the corners of your bed. Whenever you want to make a wish, you just pray on the bones and your wish will come true. Ye Xian was excited. She quickly did as she was told. She went to the place where the fish bones were buried. She gathered them up. She put them in 4 pots and she hid them at 4 corners of her bed. Ye Xian was happy to have her mother's bones nearby. She felt comforted and she was just happy to be able to speak to her mother. Now, one day, everyone was excited because the cave festival was coming up. Now, the cave festival was this yearly festival. The young maidens and the young men got together to meet at this festival, and this is usually where marriage matches were made. So Ye Xian was young and she wanted to escape from this horrible life that she had. So she wanted to go. She wanted to have fun. She wanted to meet someone nice and get married, but she didn't have anything to wear. So she decided to pray to the bones. And by some miracle, the bones gave her a beautiful dress of sea green silk, a kingfisher cloak, Kingfishers are a kind of a bird, so you can imagine how beautiful this cloak is, and a pair of tiny golden slippers. Does this sound familiar to you? Ye Xian goes to this festival and she is easily the most ravishing, beautiful, stunning maiden there. All the men are in awe. Their jaws just drop down to the floor. The women look at her and they're like so surprised. They've never seen this girl before. They're so jealous as well because the men have stopped talking to them and they're just looking at Ye Xian. Ye Xian's stepmother and stepsister see the beautiful girl at the festival and they think, oh, she looks a little bit familiar. So they start to make their way towards Ye Xian. But Ye Xian sees them coming their way. She gets a bit nervous, so she decides to run away. And as she runs away from the festival, you guessed it, she lost one of her golden slippers. So she arrives home in her dress and one slipper. She hides her dress and her kingfisher cloak and her one slipper in her room. And she sleeps out in the garden so that when her stepmother comes home, they won't suspect her. So when they see her sleeping in her rags, her face dirty, they don't suspect anything. The lost slipper was found by a merchant who thought, oh, I'm going to sell this slipper to the king because it's a golden slipper. It's quite special. So he presented the slipper to the king, and the king became obsessed with this slipper. He thought, this is the most beautiful, tiny golden slipper I've ever seen. The maiden who wears this slipper must be equally as beautiful. This is kind of not very good logic, but never mind. So he sends his men, he sends his army out to tell the people of China that he will marry the girl who can fit into the slipper. So all the maidens from all around China gather together. They try on the slipper, but this slipper is magic. It is an enchanted slipper. Whenever someone wears the slipper, it will naturally shrink a size or two so that no one could fit the slipper. The king was upset because he had not been able to find the woman who owned the slipper. So he called in the merchant. He said, where did you find the slipper? He said, I found this near the land of the caves. So the king sent his messengers and his men there to search every house. And finally, they found the golden slipper and the beautiful sea green dress and the kingfisher cloak in Ye Xian's room. They asked the stepmother, who is the owner of the slipper? The stepmother, of course, lies and says it's her own daughter. But when the daughter tries the slipper on, of course, it doesn't fit. So they decided that Ye Xian must be the owner of the slipper, even though she was dressed in rags. They took Ye Xian back to the palace to meet the king. The king wasn't really convinced because Ye Xian was really dirty. She was messy. She was dressed in rags. But he said to her, please change into this dress and the slipper and we'll see. So Ye Xian transformed herself. She was beautiful once again in her beautiful dress, her kingfisher cloak, and her golden slippers. When the king saw her, he knew she was the maiden for him, and he brought her back to his palace, and they got married and lived happily ever after. Now you might be wondering what happened to the stepmother and the stepsister. Well, Ye Xian decided to forgive them because she was such a kind, gentle soul, and the two women lived out the rest of their lives in their village. The end. So this is an oral tale from China, which was first published in the Tang Dynasty compilation called Miscellaneous Morsels from Youyang. What a wonderful title. It was written around the year 850 AD by a man called Duan, Chensi. As you can probably tell, this story is remarkably similar to the European Cinderella tale that we know. It's also very similar to Bawang Putih, Bawang Merah story that I told you last week, which is from Malaysia and Indonesia. And there's also a Vietnamese tale called Tam and Kam, which is the same story. And you will see that there are many stories from ethnic groups in China, including the Tibetans and the Zhuangs, that have this similar theme. This story has spread throughout China and Southeast Asia. So the first part of the story of Ye Xian is very similar to Bawang Putih, Bawang Merah, especially the fact that she is mistreated at home, the transformation of the dead mother into a fish, and how the stepmother kills the fish and feeds it to the protagonist. The difference begins when Ye Xian decides to go to the cave festival. And in this instant, it follows the plot of the traditional Cinderella tale, especially the element of the lost slipper, what we would call the slipper test. In fact, some scholars believe that this is one of the earliest variants of the Cinderella tale. I think there is an even earlier variant from Egypt. I'll try and find that story and I'll do a video on it. Let's talk about the ending. I'm not really happy with that ending because Ye Xian just forgives her stepmother and stepsister, even though they were so cruel and horrible to her. I wanted more retribution for Ye Xian. I wanted her to get her revenge. Fortunately, there is an alternative ending which I love. In this alternative ending, the stepmother and stepsister were killed by a random meteor shower of rocks from the sky. This shower of rocks just came down upon them. It didn't kill anybody else. It just killed these two women. Now, someone from the village felt sorry for them and buried the two women in a pit. And this pit was eventually called the Tomb of Regretful Women. This was so that people can visit the tomb and be reminded of the evil actions of these two women. And the tomb serves as a reminder of how not to live your life. Ye Xian has the same themes as we discussed in the Bawang Putih, Bawang Merah episode. Link down below if you want to have a look at that. And these themes include the role of both mothers in their quest to ensure the survival of their offspring, sibling rivalry between stepsisters, the transformation of the main character as she strives to survive, and the element of magic and enchantment. And in this story, it is the arrival of the mysterious spiritual ancestor who arrives just in time to tell Ye Xian where the fish bones have been buried and to tell her what to do. So what do you think of this story? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please do leave a comment. If you like this video and my other videos, please do like and subscribe to my channel. It will really help me get these stories out there. Don't go just yet. Check out episode 27, my Bawang Putih Bawang Merah story, for an in-depth look at the themes in this particular tale. They're exactly the same. Take care and I'll see you in the next episode.